My fiancée and her parents disrespected and made fun of my late mother in front of her whole family. So I called off the wedding immediately right in front of everyone. I'm 32, male, and until recently I was engaged to a woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. My mother had died about a year ago in a car accident, something I still hadn't fully come to terms with. Growing up, my mother was the type who'd help anyone, no questions asked. She even helped my fiancé's parents secure a loan for their home renovation once, co-signing so the bank would trust them. She never wanted a penny in return, always saying, "Family is who you choose to help." The night of our engagement party, which was meant to double as the announcement for our wedding date, I already felt on edge. Maybe it was the weight of missing my mother or the general stress of wedding planning, but something felt off in the atmosphere. My fiancé's family had organized the event at their large suburban home, with relatives from both sides gathered in the living room. It should have been a celebratory moment. Instead, tension crackled in the air. After a brief introduction from my fiancé's father, my fiancée and her parents decided to give a lighthearted speech. I wasn't sure what they'd planned, but I certainly didn't expect them to joke about my late mother. They started referencing how my mother was always meddling, how she offered help we never asked for. I felt my neck flush. It was bad enough they used a mocking tone, but to speak ill of a dead woman who'd once co-signed their loan out of sheer kindness, that cut deep. A hush fell across the room as my fiancé's father quipped, "Let's hope we can keep future in-laws from overstepping," and my fiancée giggled, adding something about overbearing motherly affection. The crowd gave uncomfortable chuckles, not sure if they should laugh or cringe. I stood there, fists clenching at my sides. My mother had been gone for a year, and they were ridiculing her memory in front of all these people. In that moment, my mind flashed to the times my mother had selflessly given these very people groceries when they struggled financially, or how she babysat my fiancé's younger siblings free of charge. She was never overbearing, just generous. Yet here they were, rewriting her story in cruel jabs. I swallowed my anger, forcing myself to remain calm. I kept telling myself there must be some misunderstanding, some joke gone too far. But no. After a minute of these jokes, I realized they were intentionally dissing her, maybe to amuse the side of the family that disliked outsiders. My fiancée and her parents clearly found it hilarious. I shot a glance at my fiancée, hoping for a sign of remorse. All I saw was a smug grin, as though she was enjoying the attention. Finally, they wrapped up their rude commentary. My fiancé's father said, "We might have done things differently if dear mother were still around," with a snicker. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood in silence for a heartbeat, scanning the faces, confusion from my father's side of the family, a couple of my friends glaring in disbelief, and my fiancée smirking as if she expected me to roll with it. My heart hammered. I made up my mind in that instant. I wouldn't stand for this. I stepped forward, took the microphone, and forced a smile. "Well," I began, voice steady but tight, "thank you all for coming. I'm sure we all enjoyed that heartwarming set of remarks about my late mother. She would have loved hearing how you see her now that she can't defend herself." A few gasps fluttered through the crowd. The fiancé's father shifted uneasily. My fiancée frowned, confusion etching her face. With each word, I unleashed the truth about how my mother had helped them. Let's recall a few real stories, shall we? Like the time my mother helped co-sign a loan for this house. Or when she paid for that landscaping job they swore they'd pay back but never did. Or how she spent hours looking after the kids so you 2-inch, I gestured to my fiancé's parents, could have date nights. Funny how none of that made it into your light-hearted speech. My fiancé's cheeks burned red. She half whispered, "What are you doing?" I ignored her, pressing on, sarcasm dripping from my tone. "I'm sorry we lost such an overbearing meddler. But apparently, she meddled just enough to keep your household afloat. Sure, poke fun at her memory. That's the least you can do to repay someone who gave so much." A hush fell over the room. Even the wait staff near the back froze. My father's side stared in stunned solidarity, eyes narrowing at the fiancé's family. Some of my fiancé's relatives looked horrified, while others fidgeted uncomfortably. My fiancée tried to grab the mic, but I pivoted away. The adrenaline coursing through me wouldn't let me stop. My voice cracked slightly. I guess this party was also meant to finalize wedding dates. Perfect occasion, right? A chance to celebrate two families joining. I paused, locking eyes with my fiancée. "But you know what? I'm calling off this wedding. Effective immediately. I see no reason to marry into a family that disrespects my mother. The entire living room erupted. A shriek from my fiancé, stunned cries from the audience, and an outraged roar from my fiancé's father. My father's side of the family collectively exhaled in relief, as if they'd been waiting for me to stand up for my mother. My fiancée tried yanking at my sleeve, wailing, "You can't just do that here." Her mother's voice rose in protest, calling me an ungrateful liar. But I stood tall. Ungrateful? She's the woman who died a year ago after everything she did for you. And you mock her memory? That's ingratitude. In that moment, the fiancé's father lunged forward, practically foaming at the mouth. He hurled accusations, "You're humiliating us in front of everyone." I retorted, "You did that yourselves." Some relatives tried to calm him. My fiancé, tears streaming, tried to paint me as the villain, how I was overreacting to harmless jokes. That only fanned my anger further. The tension built to a fever pitch. My fiancé's mother hissed that I was just sensitive about losing your mother, as though grief gave me no right to call him out. "You want to see sensitive?" I shot back. "Let's talk about how you relied on my mother's money and generosity when you lost your job that one year. Without her, you wouldn't have kept your car. Don't talk to me about sensitivity." A few gasps. Some extended family looked at them in shock. They hadn't known the extent of the help my mother provided. The fiancé's parents seemed cornered, their sense of entitlement flaring. Then I dropped the mic, figuratively and almost literally, and stormed out. My father's side followed me, some shouting final words of disgust at the fiancé's family. My now ex-fiancée pleaded, "Wait, let's talk this through privately." But no, she had publicly insulted my mother. I was done. That night, chaos ensued. My phone buzzed with messages, some from relatives apologizing, others from the ex-fiancé's side cursing me for humiliating them. My father's side, plus a few of my mother's close friends, told me I did the right thing. They commended me for defending my mother's memory. I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me was numb from the emotional roller coaster. Part of me was burning with residual anger. The ex-fiancée tried calling me incessantly. When I finally picked up out of sheer exhaustion, she sobbed, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. She insisted that her father had taken light-hearted family teasing too far, and she had no idea he'd disrespect my mother so openly. I reminded her that she'd joined in the jokes. She stammered excuses, blaming the atmosphere, saying she was caught up in the moment. "I never meant to be cruel," she whined. "Could you just give me another chance?" But something broke inside me, seeing her hypocrisy on full display. She'd laughed along. My mother was no punchline. I told her plainly, "A mother's memory is sacred. The moment you all turned her into a laughing stock, you destroyed any trust we had." She cried, offering to apologize publicly, to do anything. But my resolve was set. "No wedding," I repeated. "That's final." News spread like wildfire through both families. Entitled relatives from her side tried to guilt me. "So you're gonna throw away this relationship over a small joke?" I spat back, "Call it small if you like, but it's enough for me." Meanwhile, her father threatened to sue me for emotional distress. A laughable threat. He had no grounds. He raged about how I ruined his reputation, but the only reputation he'd ruined was his own. Days turned into a week. My father's side mostly rallied around me. Some tried to comfort me about losing a potential life partner, but I saw no partner in someone who degraded my mother just to amuse her folks. My phone still erupted with pleas from my ex-fiancée. She emailed me a long letter, half apology, half blaming me for overreacting. She said I should have privately confronted her father, not made a scene. I read it, shook my head. She'd made a public mockery first. My response matched the stage they'd chosen. My father offered to step in, wanting to talk sense to the ex-fiancé's parents, but I declined. I was done mediating with that family. As far as I was concerned, my mother's memory deserved unwavering respect. They'd crossed the line. Let them face the consequences. In the aftermath, I found an unexpected sense of closure. My mother's passing had left me raw and vulnerable, searching for a supportive partner to fill the void. Instead, I discovered that the woman I planned to marry and her family could never respect the person who mattered most to me. Unforgivable. My ex-fiancé's family eventually retreated, realizing they couldn't bully me into backtracking. The father's empty threats of legal action dissipated. My ex-fiancée tried a final gambit, showing up at my doorstep with tears in her eyes, holding a box of my mother's old photos she'd stolen from me. She offered them back as a peace gesture, claiming she wanted to keep them safe. That only repulsed me more, knowing she'd rummaged through my mother's belongings. I told her to leave them and go. Neighbors might have heard our argument on the porch, her begging for forgiveness, me steadfast in refusal. She left in tears, hurling insults over her shoulder, calling me heartless. The irony was thick. If I was heartless, what did that make someone who publicly ridiculed a deceased woman's memory? Legally, there was no wedding contract to break, just canceled venue reservations and a ring to reclaim. I'd paid for a deposit on a small wedding hall, which I forfeited. The ring was a separate issue. I demanded it back, explaining I wasn't going to let them keep a token of sincerity after they spat on my mother's name. She fought it initially, but eventually returned it. Good riddance. Weeks later, I stood at my mother's gravesite, feeling that quiet sadness that always hits me around sunset. But this time, there was also a sense of resolve. I'd honored her by refusing to let bullies, no matter who they were, drag her reputation through the mud. And that fact gave me peace. So that's how my wedding plans went up in smoke, but I walked away with something more valuable than any ceremony. I kept my dignity, stayed true to my mother's memory, and learned that I deserve a partner who'd cherish my mother's legacy, not mock it.